Talk to us a little bit more about what is this coat of armor, and how is it, literal, is it figurative?
Well,
um,
when I speak about a coat of armor or armor, I don't mean something literal so that we're walking around like they walked around in Wakanda. I'm talking about the figurative armor of our history. For example, when I desegregated the University of Georgia in 1961, hundreds of white students opposed my being there, along with my colleague Hamilton Holmes. And so they shouted terrible epithets against us as we walked through the campus at night. Students rioted and threw bricks through my window because I was placed on the first floor, I guess, to make it easy for this to happen. And one night, when all of this had been going on, and finally the police came rather late, deliberately, I think, to give the rioters a chance to make their point with their bricks and nasty words, the dean came and told me I was being suspended for my own safety. Now, here's what history teaches you. I knew that Autherine Lucy, who had tried to desegregate the University of Alabama, same thing happened to her, and she and her attorney Thurgood Marshall were very antagonistic in their public responses, which the university used against them and would not let her return at that time. She did some years later. But I walked out into that darkness with the dean, not knowing what was out there. So the next day in Atlanta, 73 miles away, they had taken us home that night. The journalist asked me about, how scary it was. I said it wasn't scary. And they said it wasn't scary. They were throwing bricks at you. And once again, that history in my own subconscious had taken care of me that night, because my grandfather was the preacher, but my grandmother was the saint, and she used to teach me Bible verses. And one of the Bible verses she taught me had a line, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." Now that's biblical history, but it's still armor that she coated me with when I was 4, 5, 6 years old. And as we go through our own lives, I grew up in a segregated society in the South where we were taught. I grew up in a segregated society in the South where we were taught by the powers that be that we were second class. But our parents, our neighbors, our teachers at school and Sunday school, when they couldn't give us first class citizenship, they gave us a first class sense of ourselves. And so when I told my mother after reading the comics that I wanted to be Brenda Starr, like the white, redheaded, blue eyed woman in the comics, who was a journalist that traveled all over the world, my mom didn't say, "Oh no, that's not what little black girls do." My mother just said very simply in her own understated way, because she was pretty much an understated person, "If that's what you want to do." Because I think that instinctively my mother understood about armor building and how dreams are part of an armor and dreams propel ambition. And so that's what she said, if that's what you want to do. And here I've been all over the world practicing journalism, doing journalism, because of that confidence that my mother placed in me, and the armor that she placed around me, and mentally in particular. The same thing happened, as I said, at church. It happened at school. My high school was named for Henry McNeil Turner, and you did not walk into that school without understanding the role that he played in the freedom of black people and the freedom struggle of black people. You had to learn that history. And what is so depressing to me, and I want to be optimistic in this conversation, but I'm pessimistic about the fact that very few of our schools are teaching history today, and especially African American history. And I think that that's something that we really need to, we older generation need to get on board with trying to fix, because our young people, black, white, brown, all colors, all races, all genders, need to understand that history. Because if you don't, you live in a world of isolation, and you begin to take in a lot of the negativism that we're seeing as regards race. I watched something on television the other day that was very disturbing to me. It was the leader of our country uh, talking about sending back um, 4 young congressmen, according to him, to the country where they came from. Well, 3 of them were born in this country, but the 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 people who were there attending that rally started shouting, "Send them back, send them back." And I was just watching, it didn't matter to me. I just watched what was going on television. But I looked and I saw a young white girl who couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old. And she was just saying what she heard everybody else saying, "Send them back, send them back." But she's looking all around, not really paying attention to what was being said. She just heard it and was repeating what everybody else was repeating. I am convinced that that young woman had no idea what she was talking about. But I am also equally convinced that that is how you our society creates some of the ugliness that we're seeing, because it starts with these young people. And if you don't have something to counterbalance that, like what they're learning in school, like, this is wrong. This is not our nation. One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I mean, those things are still important to teach our young people. Freedom and justice for all is very, very important. One of the very important lessons that needs to be taught in our school, along with the history of people who have had to struggle to become first class citizens and still do. If we don't teach that in our schools, we have serious problems along this moral road that we need to travel.